Hello, everybody. Excuse me. I want to come on here and do a wine tasting. I made a post earlier today that showed a picture of the bottle, and there were a couple of comments that was made about the label. First of all, let me just tell you that this is from Sister Creek Winery, which I believe is Texas, the state of Texas' oldest winery. My friend Charles Bonnewell and my camping group first turned me on to this wine a few years back, and every year he brings me a bottle or two up from Texas when I meet him in Indiana in June, and this year was no exception. It's an incredible wine. It's a little pricey. I looked it up. I actually did not realize how pricey it was. It sells for about $43 a bottle, and he actually gave me 3 bottles this trip, so I'm very appreciative. If you look at the label, and of course it's backwards when I show it to you here, but if you look at the picture that I posted on our page earlier, you will see that it's kind of got an interesting label. It doesn't come out and say what type of red wine it is. It just says that it's a Vintners collection, which doesn't really tell you anything unless you read the label. Now, on the label itself, in addition to showing that it's 13.8% alcohol by volume and showing the vintage is 2019, it has the words on the very front of the label, which is quite unusual. By the way, I've been losing the signal off and on all day today, and now it keeps showing up again, slow signal. So if I get cut off, I'll wait a few seconds, and if it continues to stay off, then I'll delete it. If not, it'll come back on. All right, well, this label, on the very front of the label, it says Cabernet Sauvignon, 50%. Petit Verdot, which is another red wine grape, 24%. Merlot, 10%. Petit Syrah, 8%. Malbec, 8%. Now, taken all together, that is a blend. Now, what makes this blend a little bit unusual is the fact that, first of all, I'm a huge Bordeaux fan. And Bordeaux is, of course, made in the Bordeaux region on the southwestern side of France. Bordeaux, in most instances, first of all, Bordeaux, depending if it's on the east bank or the right bank or the left bank, Bordeaux is either Cabernet Sauvignon based or it's Merlot based, but with very, very few exceptions, except for maybe some of the incredible first growths. Bordeaux's are generally a blend, and the blend, and again, it's either the largest grape in it by percentage wise is either Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot. Generally, it's Cabernet Sauvignon. But Bordeaux also has a little bit of Cab Franc in it, a little bit of Petit Verdot in it occasionally, some Petit Syrah, or it may just be Cabernet Sauvignon with a little bit of Merlot mixed in. But in any event, what makes it famous is that it's a blend. And not only is it a blend, but Bordeaux is famous for being aged in oak barrels. And this Sister Creek Winery or Sister Creek Vineyard, I should say, from Texas, they replicate the taste of Bordeaux almost perfect. You probably will not find another wine in the United States that I have tasted myself personally that comes as close as tasting as a French Bordeaux. I went to a wine dinner, a formal wine dinner, when I worked at the university about 25 years ago. And we had a formal dinner, and they decided to play a little trick on Wayne. They took 10 bottles of wine, and they put a paper bag over them. And then they poured me a little glass of every one of the 10, one at a time, and they asked me to taste it and to tell them what type of wine it was. Well, I nailed 10 out of 10. I mean, I could tell right away if it was a Cab or a Syrah or a Zinfandel or a Merlot or a Pinot Noir or a Chardonnay. But fortunately, they did not give me a Bordeaux, which is a blend. Now, had they done that, well, I shouldn't say that, but a Bordeaux has a very unique taste because it is a blend. And so this is an incredible wine. I've had it before. I've never done a formal tasting on it, so I don't really know how I want to respond to this or smell it or whatever. So I'm just going to get into it and do the tasting. And again, thank you, Charles, for this wine. Color is great. I mean, it's a very deep Bordeaux style Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah color. Very deep ruby red, very deep ruby red. And the rim around the edge is strikingly not as light as you see in most reds. It's pretty dark itself, but you can still see the rim. Now you hold it up and you look at it, and oh, by the way, the clarity is perfect. So you hold it up and you look at it, and the legs are great, which would indicate it's a well-made wine, which, by the way, I already know it's a well-made wine. I've had this wine, as I said, in years past. This will be the third year I've had this wine. So I know it's a well-made wine. This particular vintage is a 2019, so it's 5 years old. So I don't really know the nuances of tasting it because I don't remember, obviously. But I'm going to tell you right now that had it had a lot of tannins in it when it was a fresh wine, 5 years in the bottle, this wine is going to have mellowed out a lot. The tannins will have been subdued. The fruit should have improved in the wine, and so it should be a nice wine. This is definitely an age-worthy wine. There's no question about it. I don't know that this wine would age 15 or 20 years, but certainly 5 years would have been an excellent aging point for this wine. So, alrighty, let's get into this and let's see what we get as far as the aroma on the nose. Well, the first thing that's going to strike you, it's got the very standard black Merlot, black wine, black grape, Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah aroma, which is black currants, blackberries, black cherries, things of that nature. Terry, you just came on a little bit just now. If you get a chance, go back and listen to the whole thing. I discussed the label that you had made a point on Facebook about earlier this afternoon. So if you get a chance, you might want to listen. All right, so the nose has got the standard black cherry, blackberry, black currant, black fruit. It's also got a little bit of spice in it, and more importantly, you can sniff this wine and know right away that this wine has been aged in oak. It's got an oak aroma to it. Now, it doesn't necessarily smell like toasted oak. It's just standard oak aroma. It's a very pleasant nose, and again, it's your standard black fruits and a hint of spice, and not necessarily a specific spice, just spices in general. You know, if you open up your spice cabinet, you have all your spices in there. You might have 25, 30, 40 spices like I do. And you get a certain aroma when you open that cabinet of spices. Nothing really dominates because they're all together. That's kind of what you get in this wine when I say spice. And of course it has oak. It's a beautiful, pleasant aroma. Let's taste it and see what we get here. Two surprises. The first thing I noticed that when it hit the end of my tongue, the front of my tongue, it was very smooth. I'm not sure I can really even tell you what smooth means when it came across the tip of my tongue. That was the first thing that struck me. The second thing that struck me is that I expected the tannins to be heavily diminished. The tannins are not heavily diminished. This wine still has a lot of tannins in it, which would tell you that this wine can age for another, I'm guessing, 4 or 5 years. That's a good made wine. Now let me focus this time. I'm going to taste it again. This time I want to get past the smoothness. I want to get past the tannins, and I want to focus on the taste, the fruit that I could smell earlier. Black cherry. Black cherry is the dominant fruit. Oak is definitely in the palate also, but black cherry is your dominant fruit. I'm not picking up the blackberry. I'm purely getting black cherry and oak. It's very, very pleasant. So, well, anyway, that's this wine that Charles Bonnewell gifted me. It's an incredible wine. This wine would pair with the best steak that you could buy at your butcher shop or at your supermarket. Regardless of how you fixed it, this wine would stand up to it. But you could take your cuisine down to meatloaf, and this wine would still pair with it very well. I wouldn't do anything that's light or white. For example, I wouldn't do pasta. I wouldn't do salads as your primary meal. You could probably get by with a pasta with very heavy red sauce. If you had very heavy red sauce, you could probably get by with that. If you had Mexican food, for example, spicy Mexican food, enchiladas, quesadillas, tacos, burritos, you could probably get by with that. But I think that the biggest drawing or calling card for this particular thick, exquisite tasting wine would be a nice, big, thick steak. It will stand up to pretty much anything. It's well worth the money. Like I said, I looked it up and it shows that it's $43. That is pretty high, but it's worth it. And again, my surprise is that it still has as much tannins in it. I'm going to taste it again. It's been open now in my glass for about 10 minutes, and the nose has not changed. The nose has still got the blackberry, the black cherry, and the oak. I'm going to taste it again, though, since it's been, in the glass for about 10 minutes. Tannins are still there. If anything, the black cherry has gotten a little bit more intense. So there is black cherry. It's very intense. It's got oak, and it has tannins. But it's a wonderful wine. I would strongly recommend this wine. All right. I did a podcast earlier today on climate and how climate affects wine production. If you get a chance, you might want to go back and listen to that. It lasted about 16 minutes, and it's kind of an interesting podcast. I've been doing some reading on some other things that I'd like to talk about, and I still want to do glasses. I still want to do terroir. Climate was a good start. I'd like to do vineyard selection and stuff like that. I am enjoying these wine tastings, but I would really enjoy if I could get some feedback on people. All right, for the folks that came on late, and Terry particularly, Terry Netzley, Terry had mentioned I took a picture of this Sister Creek wine and posted it on our page. And Terry says, that's an interesting label. He is absolutely spot on. This is one of the very few wines that I've drank that doesn't tell you on the label what type of wine it is. It doesn't say it's a Cabernet Sauvignon. It doesn't say it's a Merlot or a Syrah or anything like that. American wines do that. They tell you what the grape varietal is in the wine. European wines don't do that. Bordeaux doesn't say this is a Cabernet or this is a Merlot. They say this is a Bordeaux. Same with Burgundy. They don't say this is a Pinot Noir. They say this is a Burgundy. So this is unusual to see a label from an American wine producer that doesn't have the name of the grape that's on it. So what does Sister Creek do? As Terry noticed on the label, they have called out every single one of the grape varietals that's in this wine. And the standard varietals, and I read these already, it's 50% Cab and 24% Petit Verdot, 10% Merlot, 8% Petit Syrah, and 8% Malbec. Those are all blended grapes that makes up a Bordeaux. So if you was to pick this bottle of wine up, and if you know a little bit about wine, you don't need to be an expert. If you knew a little bit, particularly if you knew about Bordeaux, if that was one of your favorites wines, you would pick this bottle up, read that on the label, and say, whoa, this is an American Bordeaux. I know there's no such thing as an American Bordeaux, but this is an American wine that is based on the way that Bordeaux is made. And then your next thought, before you taste it, would be, I bet this has been aged in oak. And then when you taste it, there's no question. It has been aged in oak. So, Terry, that was a great question. Or it was a great comment, I should say. Again, I did a podcast today, earlier on climate, and I've done this one on the Sister Creek Bordeaux wannabe wine. I'll try to get a tasting done tomorrow. No, I probably won't get a tasting done tomorrow. So I may not get another tasting done until maybe Sunday afternoon. I've got a pretty full weekend ahead of me. I'm trying to get some work done around the property, too, that I've been neglecting. But I will get back to it. I would encourage you to ask your friends to subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's under my name, Wayne Riley. And then the subtitle is Wayne's World of Wine. I have 21 subscribers. I appreciate that, folks, those of you who have subscribed. But you might want to mention it to friends of yours that aren't Facebook people, but they might be YouTube people. Suggest to them that they might want to do that, because Facebook page is my primary platform where I'm at right now talking to you folks. But I am duplicating all of the live podcasts on Wayne's World of Wine Facebook page and transferring those over to the YouTube. Only the podcast, only the live. The other ones, informational things, I won't put those over on. Whoop, banging my glass here. Put those over on the YouTube channel. By the way, I posted yesterday a map of zones for wine around the world. It seemed to be very popular. If you haven't looked at it, go back and look at it. A couple of people who are not really heavy wine drinkers, they made comments. One of them, including my cousin up in the Columbus area, and he made a comment. He says, "I bet you Scandinavia is falling into the zone now with climate change." And I had made a comment on the Facebook page. He's absolutely right. And I remember 20 years ago, I was in Harrods is a large department store in London, and the whole basement is practically a wine store, very high-end wine store. And those people down there, they have to have master of wines or be a sommelier in order to work there, for the most part. So I'm in Harrod's basement, and I was talking to this guy, and he was a master of wines. He was English. And I asked him if they had any English reds, and he said no. He said, England is too cold for reds. He says, we're doing primarily whites. I bet if I was to go back there 20 years later now, I bet you I would find that England is starting to produce red grapes as well as the whites, because climate change is creeping into areas that in the past have been a little cooler. So I just thought that was interesting. So those lines on that map that I posted, that's about a 25-year-old map from my wine encyclopedia. I would suspect that they're off quite a bit, particularly on the northern side of the northern hemisphere and the southern boundary on the southern hemisphere. I think that those areas have probably gotten a little bit warmer with climate control, or climate change, I should say. Okay, well, listen, I'm going to let you all go for that. Something just came to mind. I think I would like to do a short podcast on grape varietals versus cold versus warm climates. It's kind of well known, for example, Paso Robles in the southern part of California. They make some of the finest reds in the state of California, if not in the United States. But it's a hot climate area. So what do they focus on? Petite Sirah, Zinfandel, a few cabs, some Merlots, but predominantly very dark red grapes. On the other side of the coin, there are areas in Northern California that are somewhat inland, that are cooler climates, and they focus on the white grapes, the white wines, the Chardonnays, the Sauvignon Blancs, the Pinot Grigios. So I would kind of like to do a short podcast sometime in the near future, just kind of identifying the various red grapes and white grapes and the type of climate that they're best suited for, whether it be warm or whether it be cool. I won't go into what I did on today's podcast and talk about wind and sunshine and rain and frost and all of those climate things. I'll simply just do cold versus hot, red versus white. Well, listen, thank you if you happen to come on and listen to this podcast, and it certainly is appreciated. I'm going to get off of here and maybe finish this little glass of wine. I won't drink too much because I'm actually thinking of heading down to the family room and jumping on the treadmill. Well, listen, I'll see you all later, and thanks again for stopping by. Bye.